My name is Lisa Schwager, and you can call me Professor Lisa or Dr. Schwager, whatever you prefer. This is SIPC 420, and if you're not in the right class, I suggest leaving now. You weren't sure about that, were you? I'm glad that you found out that you were in the right seat, right room. So this is, SIPC stands for Counseling Psychology, and we will be going over interventions to counseling. So what would you think is the most important part of counseling? You there. Yes, empathy is correct. So we will be going over attending behavior and empathy. So attending behavior includes supporting your client with individual and cultural visuals, appropriate visuals. And this includes vocal quality, verbal tracking, and body language. So verbal tracking is pretty much restating keywords that the person used. Vocal quality is inflection of voice, because you don't want someone who's monotone. You don't want to be talking to a robot, because that wouldn't be very interesting, and you wouldn't want their advice, I don't think. And I need to spread the love. And body language. Body language is how you're approaching them. If you have your legs crossed, depending on where your legs are crossed, it can say that you're either open to the person or you're closed off to the person. And I see you there are closed off. So I hope you open up to this classroom soon. And you also will have to make sure how your client is responding. So when you're counseling them, you need to be listening and watching, observing what they're doing to see if they like what you're saying. So listening is central to the counseling process. It's where we get all our info, and it's essential to our clients. Not only that we are listening to them, but we are actually hearing what they are saying. So yeah, you could be listening to me right now, or you could be like that one student who has it going in one ear and out the other. So there are 3 V's and a B, and this will be important, so make sure that you're taking notes, because this will be on your exam. So visual eye contact, it's looking at people while you're talking to them. Very, very important. Vocal qualities, so like I said before, vocal tone and speech rate. You don't want to be counseling someone and speaking like someone who just talks really fast, like blah 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 blah. Yeah, like that, pretty much. Verbal tracking, speaking with intense and important stuff, so like I said, keywords. And attentive and authentic body language. Squaring off, leaning forward, look interested, facial gestures, and be encouraging. To be encouraging, all you have to do is pretty much nod your head at appropriate times. You don't want to be a head bobber who just keeps going like this, because then it looks weird. And most importantly, be authentic and be genuine. So if you're not being yourself, pretty sure your client would be able to tell that you're not being yourself either. These skills are used to reduce the time you talk and to try and help the client feel more comfortable when talking to you. This hopefully will help them open up more and feel more secure and honest. It also helps clients reflect on what actually happened to them and tell you all about that. And it helps you communicate to the client that you are interested or concerned about what happened to them. So, visual eye contact. I'm pretty sure you've heard people say, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Important to acknowledge and understand these are numerous cultural differences in eye contact behaviors. Studies have actually found that males don't like it when their counselor is looking at them, so they feel more comfortable if they're actually sitting side by side, so they don't have to look at each other and talk that way. So I found that interesting. I believe the studies also found that women do like face-to-face contact. Some cultures use more contact when listening and others when not. I believe it was Middle Eastern cultures that don't like it when you look at them, like the elderly are allowed to look at you, but you are not allowed to look at the elderly, because they're superior to you in some aspects. And also for teachers, you wouldn't be technically, if I believed in that culture, not believed in that culture, but if I was part of that culture, you wouldn't look at me, I would just be looking at you. It can be a sign of disrespect and aggression if you have eye contact. So it's always good to read up and understand your client. It's okay to ask them how what makes them feel at home or better. Visual eye contact can also be a sign of when they're trying to avoid a topic. So when they break eye contact, that can mean that they're feeling uncomfortable. And you can either confront this, which can be important, or you can put it aside and bring it up at a later time when the client is more comfortable telling you things. So it's critical to understand the client and where they're coming from before making conclusions regarding eye contact. It also communicates appropriateness of topic. Pupils may dilate if conversation topic is interesting. So let's go into more vocal quality specifics. Your change in vocal tone, volume, and speech rate can communicate an immense amount of information. Examples could be feelings of shock, empathy, anger, fear, concern, surprise, etc. Different people, different reactions to same changes in voice. Demonstrates importance of understanding to your clients. So if you're talking high-pitched, and it could come off as aggressive. And if you're talking softly, it could come off as in kind of condescending. So you have to find a good median. That's why being genuine is really important. So I made stars because, remember, you need to know about the 3 V's plus a B, so I just wrote up visual eye contact. So make sure you know that. And now we are going into verbal tracking. So different people react differently to how you talk to them. So it's important to understand that and how they react. So verbal underlining is when you place emphasis on certain words. You and your client will do this. Being aware of speech is incredibly useful. For instance, hesitations in speech could be emotionally charged topic. You must be aware of yourself as well as the client in this observation, because it could be a part of like either a breaking point, either a good or bad breaking point, or it could be they're just not ready to talk about that yet, which we already talked about. So verbal tracking is to stick with what your client is talking about. So pretty much restating what they're saying to make sure that they know you heard what they were talking about. Clients tend to shift fairly quickly, especially if you're talking to a child. Will be talking about one thing one moment and the next thing another moment. Oh, I just broke up with my girlfriend. Oh, but I am having this huge test tomorrow, it's stressing me out. So make sure that you cover all the topics when you are having a discussion with your client. Part of the job is to pick up on what the client may be trying to tell you without really saying it. So this is the part about visual, like observation of their body language. So if like the person is playing with their ring finger, if they have a ring there, it could mean they're thinking about their husband or wife, spouse, whatever, or it could mean something completely different. Maybe it means insecurity, or they did something that they regret. So it's always good to confront that. Selective attention occurs when we listen to some things but not to others. So try to avoid this and look for the big picture, themes, connections between topics. So I'm having trouble with, for example, like if you said that you're having a huge fight with your family and they just want you to do really well in school and they're really pressuring you, but then you have a big huge test that you've been studying for and you failed it, you could make the connection that because they're having family problems, that the reason why they didn't have a good grade on the exam is because they were too focused on what their family problems were. Don't be afraid to interrupt in a therapeutic way. Ask for clarification, or otherwise make sure you're tracking correctly. So, redirecting and silence. When may it be useful to redirect a client? Yes, like when they start to focus all the blame on someone else instead of focusing on like what's actually wrong inside, like how they're actually feeling. So it's always good to redirect to themselves, to center everything to them, to make sure they're telling you what's wrong with them. Silence is actually a good thing, which you might not think about, but it allows, like if you're not talking, it allows the client to maybe add on to their story and reflect on what's actually really happening. So attentive, and I feel like I missed a B somewhere, but that's okay, we'll get back to it. Body language. So think about differences in cultural, or think about cultural differences when it comes to a personal body space. Some people like to be really close, while others like to be further away. Personal bubbles are different in every culture. Americans like it roughly an arm's length, which is less or more in other countries. Women often feel more comfortable closer, while men feel better farther away. And introverts may want to have more space because they're shy. Other examples of body language is posture. If you sit in an open and closed position, which I talked about with the legs being crossed. And if you lean in, it seems that you're interested. So examples of positive uses of attending behavior, which I'm just going to say that is, no, that's not a V, so no. But attending behavior is good to know. So personalized eye contact, lean forward, warm and friendly voice, be confident, relaxed, and enthusiastic, smile, mirror tone of client. So if your client is talking softly, don't start screaming at them because you might intimidate them. Be genuine, be as comfortable as possible. Nod head. Encouragers also include wow, oh yeah. So empathy. Experiences the client's world and story from the client's perspective and reflecting their experience back to them without adding meaning or thoughts. So there are 3 different levels of empathy. So we'll talk about that. So please write this down. You're going to need to know it for your test. So there's subtractive empathy. Anyone have a guess on what it means? That's okay. This means when the counselor responds to what the client is saying, they give back less than what the client has stated or distorts what the client said. This could mean that the client is really, they're telling you, oh, I just broke up with my boyfriend, or my boyfriend just broke up with me, he cheated on me, and it's just horrible. I found out through my best friend because it was actually with her. And you say, oh, you must be very sad about this. And the client's like, no, I am devastated. I am suicidal. So yes, you did subtractive empathy. You did not tell her or him exactly what they fully feel. You were below and they were higher with the feelings. And then there's basic empathy. Basic empathy is interchangeable. This is when a counselor responds to roughly interchangeable with what the client has said. So let's say that my dad has made me do all these chores, and my younger sister doesn't have to do anything. How is that fair? And you said, well, it sounds like you're very frustrated with the situation. And it's like, yeah, I am frustrated. I am mad. So frustrated and mad, depending on how frustrated, can be interchangeable. So can anyone tell me what additive sympathy is? You there? Yes, you're correct. It's when the counselor adds to what the client is saying. So instead of when, let's say, oh, my cat just passed away, and the counselor says to me, oh, you must be devastated. I am so sorry to hear that. You're like, no, I hated that cat. That cat always attacked me. I am so happy. So the counselor added on to what they were saying. Or it could mean the whole, like, oh, you're devastated, but no, really the client's sad. So when we use empathy, mirror neurons are firing off when we act and when we observe the actions of others. We not only feel for, but with people. Shock studies with couples actually show that when their spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend are in pain, they're also in pain. Antisocial personality disorders may be due to a lack of activation in these neurons. So the 3 V's and B can be used to help teach clients basic social skills needed to effectively function in life. They're not only helpful for us, but also for our clients. Modeling this behavior for our clients can be incredibly useful. So informed consent. This is extremely important. So you, for example, I would say, hi, I'm Lisa. I'm going to be your counselor. I want to go over a few things before we get started. Everything you tell me today will remain confidential, unless you tell me you're thinking of hurting yourself, someone else, if you know of abuse of a dependent, or if I would be court-ordered to release your documents. Do you have any questions about this, or would you like to continue? So if they understand what is happening, they'll say okay, or if they don't want to, if they have something that talks about abuse that's happening to them or someone else, they'll say never mind. Or you could say like risk of harm to yourself and others, child and elderly abuse, or the court order. So that was our lesson for today. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, you can always email me after class or set up an appointment. Thank you for coming in today. See you next week.